Our guest today is one of the most quietly influential people in computing. Ion Stoica is a Berkeley professor who has spent 25 years turning university research into infrastructure that the AI industry runs on. He co-founded Databricks, which is now valued at $130 billion, and Anyscale, and he's behind open source systems like Apache Spark and Ray, which is a framework that OpenAI used to train ChatGPT. He also co-founded and chairs Arena, which is the platform that began in his Berkeley lab as Chatbot Arena and became the most watched scoreboard in AI. Ion, welcome to Lightwork. We know that Arena started out as a research project out of Berkeley back in 2023. You're very well known for having spun 4 companies out of your Berkeley lab. And this fall, you're going back to teaching undergrad. A lot of people in your position by now may have even left the classroom decades ago. Curious what has brought you back to the operating seat?
Everything in my mind is about having a positive impact, right? By impact, what I mean here, doing something that can make the life, at least of some people, better. Maybe building some tools, like software tools, which help people do their job faster and better. Maybe sometimes do things they couldn't do before. Providing a better, deeper understanding about what they are using and how they should use some of the tools the best way. Like in the case of Arena. And I think that both when at university, in industry, it's about trying to maximize that impact. And obviously in academia, it's a lot of research, early days, trying to figure out better ways to do things, hopefully. And in some of these cases, some projects, in order to be able to maximize that impact, are turning into companies.
Maybe zooming back a little bit to even the Berkeley days, when did you realize this could be something big? And in particular, I'm curious what you saw in the 2 founders you decided to partner with.
So actually, this, probably, I started as side project of another project we had. And that first project was very early days when Llama from Meta was released. A group of the students, my students, and in a weekend, took some data, which was pretty high quality data at that time, share GPT data, so people sharing their best conversation with GPT at that time. So again, this was the spring in 2023, and using that data to fine-tune, to improve the Llama model. And the resulting model was Vicuña. And then that model, we deploy it on the web and to like a chatbot. Right? So now the question is that you have that model, you believe that it's kind of better than the base Llama, but how do you show that it's better, right? And at that point, the way you are going to evaluate these models or this kind of static tests, right? You have a question answering, these kind of benchmarks, and these are obviously not capturing the real life interaction between the humans and these kind of large language models. And this is how Arena was born, trying to solve that problem and to evaluate that chatbot based on Vicuña, the model we released, and other models out there, right? And that's why the first iteration was this kind of what we called, this comparison we called battle mode, in which a user comes and asks questions, whatever questions they want, and they get answers from 2 randomized these large language models. And then at the end, the user can say, hey, I like these answers, or from this LLM, or from this other LLM, or maybe I don't like any of the answers, or both answers are great. And so that's kind of was born, the arena was born. And, for the longest time, actually, was more like, a measurement project and so forth. Didn't pay a lot of attention, but it started to get a lot of traction in the community. So now, even the large model providers using Arena to say, hey, I am performing very well here. It's because it's kind of a unique evaluation using real users on real tasks. And then it's kind of snowball from there. And then obviously, even at that point, it was not clear there is a company. It was something very popular, people find useful and so forth. But it was very atypical kind of model, because at least for me, all the other companies I've been involved before, they are like, it's some open source software project which gets a lot of adoption, and there is a company started by students to take it to the next level, right? To support it, to reach more users and things like that. But as this grew, actually, Anastasia and Waylene got more and more excited. And then it was starting to be the question is that it was pretty costly to run it, right? So now what do you do, right? It's pretty costly to run, because we have to actually pay for the access to these best models, right? Because the users, so the study provides the users free access to these best models and the ability to compare how these models are performing for their tasks. Okay, and it's critical. That point is critical because you want to maintain neutrality, right? If basically, some of these models providers gives us a lot of credits for free, then is going to be a bias there, because we are going probably to use those models more because they are free. So that's kind of, and then the next step is what do we do about it, right? To take it to the next level, because it's kind of growing leaps and bounds. And we look, for the longest time, we wanted to create a foundation or donate to a foundation. But when we look at the numbers, didn't add up, right? And then the decisions was to create a company, because Arena was becoming such an important part of the ecosystem, an ecosystem which was growing very fast. And the capabilities of the models are evolving so fast that you always need kind of, it's very dynamic environment in which you need hopefully, like some organizations or some entity which is able to measure, capabilities of these models, and not only in abstract way, but our ability, capabilities, and reflected from the human perspective, right? How useful human finds using these models for their day-to-day tasks.
So Arena has become so integral to the workflows of everybody in AI. For someone who's maybe never used Arena, could we just take a little step back, and could you explain to our audience, when someone goes to Arena and casts a vote, what does the platform do with that vote?
Our basic evaluation, like I mentioned, is based on the human votes. So humans are presented when they have a task to perform, when they ask questions. Arena provides two answers from two randomized LLMs. Now, you as a user, you can read the answers and decide which one is better. And you can vote, right? It's not mandatory to vote. If you choose not to vote, you don't vote. You don't vote. But many people will like to vote, to contribute. And then they say, okay, this model is better, or that model is better, or was the same. Now, the way to think about what we do with these votes, think about It's the model is similar. That's why sometimes it's called ELO rating, like in chess, or in you have in tennis. You have this kind of ranking, right? And these rankings are determined on the results of two players or playing with each other, and based on the result. Now, this result it also depends, for instance, of the strength of the opponent. Right, so it's if you play with a strong opponent, you are going to get a bigger bump in the rating. With a weaker opponent, you smaller one. If you win, right, and the same if you lose, and that's kind of you aggregate all these kind of votes, and then you create a leaderboard, and we have this kind of number rating, again, very similar with ELO rating in chess or ATP rating in tennis. And I'm sure, many other sports have this kind of similar ratings.
I think what's so powerful about Arena is it drove this paradigm shift from, to your point, this idea that we had these sort of standardized tests for models, right? And now you have Arena. I'm curious, in the same way that you have human votes as a differentiator and as the edge here, is that ever to your disadvantage? Are you seeing any sort of vote rigging or manipulation? How do you even figure out the difference between, likability versus actual quality?
Yes. We are, there are two things to say here. So first of all, we do a lot of work to try to filter the low quality votes, to filter bots, so to speak. So we have many techniques to do so. And we have an entire team just focusing about the quality, data quality and the integrity of the leaderboard. So it takes that very seriously because it's a matter of trust. The other thing I want to mention is about there is two things. It's objectivity and subjectivity, right? With many of the tasks. Now, there are tasks like the math tasks or programming tasks, which they are very objective, right? You know that if it's working or doesn't work. You get the correct answers. The program runs and give you the expected result. But there are also other tasks which are not are more subjective, right? So for instance, you ask the LLM to write a poem, and you get 2 poems, right? That's kind of more subjective, right? Because for good reasons, you and me can decide that a different poem is better than the other one. Right.
So how do you take some of those like subjective human votes and turn them into like an objective ranking?
Yes. So what we do, and you'll see more and more coming from us here, we try to disentangle what is kind of the subjective signals from or objective signals, right? So for instance, for the objective signals, you can check whether the result is correct or not. Right, but for the subjectives, then and the rest you disentangle, and the rest will be kind of subjective. But one point I want to make here: the subjectivity, like people say, is extremely important, right, in the kind of human communication, right? Because, for instance, when 2 people communicate, I can tell you the same information, but in one case can be, I don't know, boring and, like use many words all over the place. And in other case, it can be more, energetic, crisp, and things like that. The point is, I provide you the same information. So objectively, the 2 deliveries are kind of should be the same. However, the kind of style and how I present it makes a huge difference in terms about what, the other person kind of understand and retains in terms of information. This is always the case, right? It's like when you write a column, it's the same thing. You know what information you want to provide, but how you do it is like matters. When you look at the presentations, it's the same thing. And I think that we want, and and also model providers and application providers, they do want to understand how to deliver the information as the most effective way to humans. And this is, like it's traditional. It's like UX for any other field, right? It's like it's user experience, right? With your fridge, with your TV, and so forth. About capabilities are the same. So I just want to make the point here is that both matters, right? And we try, and you'll see more coming from us, to disentangle and tell you the factual, the correctness, and the other side. It's about the look, the stylistic, and both of them have impact.
It's so helpful that you laid this out, because I know that you all recently launched something called agent mode, which is almost taking this to a step further,
Yes.
right? You have, as you laid out, you have very binary answers in the field, but then agent mode is almost like an evolution of subjectivity plus objectivity. How do you even
Right.
assess an agent's performance?
Yes, very happy you answered that question, because the way we evaluate agents is different from this kind of pairwise comparison, because the agents are far more complicated. And obviously, as you know, fundamentally what an agent is kind of an orchestrator, large language models, which can interact with the environment. It's almost like giving the agent hands, right? To use tools, to use searches, browsers, call databases, and things like that. And then you have, of course, a harness which provides a memory, maintain state. And typically there are also multiple rounds, right? It's like, because you want to achieve a task, buy a sweater, a blue sweater, right? With, cotton, and I don't know, it's like you may have a price range, right? Or develop an entire system, right, to query data, right? So now, when in this kind of interaction between the large language models and the tools and this harness, there is a trace, right? And from giving the task to solve until you get an answer, which hopefully is the task being solved satisfactory, okay? And in this trace, again, you have multiple interactions between the tools and the large language model and so forth. So we take this trace, and then now we kind of split it in this kind of interactions. And now the fact is that in the trace, there is a lot of signals, right? Because people, for instance, are going to say, this is good, this is bad, or there may be more subtle signals. Hey, do this again, or now let's go to the next step, okay? And which kind of, capture whether that the agent satisfies the user intent or not, and needs to be corrected. And of course, there are more explicit signals like, oh, this task has completed, great job, right? Or no, it's, I'm giving up, you are clueless, right, as an agent. So we take that, and then we try to figure out a different combination, like this LLM with this kind of tools, or this LLM with this kind of harness. And based on the combinations on the signals, then we can come up. We are coming up. It's far more sophisticated. I think Anastasia can explain you even better about how this, using different models, or in the future different tools, explain those signals. So whether the agent has been successful or not, right? And this is, we just released the agentic mode, and we are very excited about that, because this is, again, one step for making AI far more useful. Of course, this means a lot of more complexity, and I think that, providing the insights about what matters and how it matters in accomplishing a task successful is very important. And I just want to point out that this is the first time an agent capabilities are evaluated using, again, real tasks from real users.
On Arena, you rank every major AI lab: OpenAI, Google, Anthropic. And at the same time, these are all potentially paying customers for Arena.
Yeah.
How do you guys stay neutral, and how do you stay seen as neutral?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, the value we provide to these customers is that neutrality, is trust, right? If we wouldn't be trusted, then whatever signals we provide to them is not going to have the same kind of value, right? So just wanted to point out that actually the incentive to be a trusted referee in the ecosystem is completely aligned to the value we provide to these customers. So the one thing also I wanted to say is that why do you do evaluation at the end of the day? Why do you want to know which models and so forth perform better for what task or is more cost effective? Because that's a bigger and bigger problem today, right? It's like you don't want to spend, like everyone now is raining on the costs, right? Using these LLMs. Is because you want to build kind of better AI. By better AI, I means you want to build AI applications, maybe agentic applications, or even models which are reliable, right? It's like satisfy, align with the user intent, and are cost effective, right? That's kind of what it is. So that's kind of what we help our customers with, right? In the case of the model providers, we do help them to improve also their models. But yeah, it's like going back, I think that I just want to reemphasize the fact that us being trusted as our evaluation being trusted, it's absolutely aligned with the value. It's actually the value we provide to our customers.
You all play such an important role as a neutral third party. And it's very clear that the target can sometimes often be what people optimize for. You see this in humans in the way that they optimize their standardized tests. You see this for the labs as well. Do you think how we measure these systems will evolve? How do you make sure that you're picking the right measurements in the first place? Especially when so much is at stake because you're driving the entire industry.
Great question. And it's again, like as a high level, we do drive the entire industry to benefit at the end of the day humans, right? So, we are very excited about this mission. The humans in our evaluation, as you can see, it's in the loop, right? We are talking about objective versus subjective and so forth. So we do believe this kind of human in the loop, and we want to incentivize the industry to benefit humans. Now, the question is about, well, you measure something then that is something, and people are going to try to adapt so that they are going to be higher on that, whatever, in that particular metric, on that kind of leaderboard. And it's true, but I think this is part of the incentivizing these LLMs, again, we see it to benefit humanity. But the other thing I want to to point out here is that this is a dynamic system. It's not a fixed set of benchmarks. And we see a lot of new tasks. You cannot optimize. You can optimize maybe for the past task, but they are going to see newer and newer tasks. And because, we made a study at some point, and, maybe you shouldn't quote me on this, all the numbers, but remember that, for instance, you see in a day some kind of like almost 70% at that time of the prompts of the question from users you haven't seen in the last 3 months. Right? And there have been studies also at Google and so forth. You have always new queries. Why new queries and new prompts and new tasks? Well, because the world around you changes. So you are going to ask questions and things like that about what happened today, right? It's like the news and things like that. In this particular case, it's because every, I don't know, like every month, every few weeks, every week, you have a new model. The capabilities are advancing, so you can do more tasks and bigger and harder tasks than you could do before, right? So you cannot kind of overfit, so to speak, to Arena, right? I think that's kind of a very important aspect, which it's a value we provide. It's live benchmarks, your live testing. Everything changes every day.
You have such a unique window into this space. And as you mentioned, it's evolving on a daily basis. You all as a platform have to evolve with the capabilities. I guess the curious question for me is just, if you play this out and if we reach this promise of AGI and these systems being like humans, is there even a world where AI might not be measurable in the way that sometimes humans aren't measurable?
That's a great question. I think obviously about AGI, I will not go into that because, it's such a ill-defined term, and you can talk with people around and say, some of them will say AGI has already arrived. And, but taking a step back, there is no question the capabilities of these models are growing leaps and bounds, right? And they are better and better, and for some tasks and better than humans. So here is all the discussion about whether AGI has happened or not. However, I just also to point out there is a part, like I told this, like about, like I mentioned earlier, about things which are not measurable, right? Which, let me give this example. I give you earlier on is the poems, but maybe a better one is music, right? It's like people have such different tastes about the music, right? And it's totally a subjective one, right? So a smart LLM, I don't know, it's like maybe can guess what I would like, but it's not only one answer, right? And that's down also to the human taste, human preference, right? And that will remain for a long while. And the other thing, like I wanted to mention, is like, is still, even today and I think in the foreseeable future, the humans are part of the loop. Think about the most successful AI applications today. Coding. It's a developer, it's in the loop, right? Customer support and things like that. It's kind of to satisfy kind of the human and answer human questions, right? So always about you want to measure and to understand what is the most effective way of humans to interact with AI, right? Which brings us to the same point about how you are going to design this kind of AI systems to benefit humans, right? Because they are ultimately the consumer. So yes, I do believe that for the foreseeable future, despite the fact that these models are going to become more and more powerful, the human signals are going to be very important, if not even more important. The one last thing I want to mention, of course, if these LLMs are going to become more powerful, we are going to use them as part of the evaluation, right? You hear a lot about this kind of, LLM as a judge, right? Using large language models to judge, instead of a human. It's actually, we wrote a paper actually very early on when Arena started about that. So in some sense, at least, we are the ones to introduce these concepts early on, right? So we had both these kind of LLMs very early on, judging and also human judging. And in that paper, we actually compare how good and what is the agreement between them and things like that.
All right, and let's talk a little bit about the business. We've talked a lot about the product. Certainly, you guys announced this week that you crossed 100 million in annualized revenue in just 8 months after launching your product. Who's paying for it, and what are they actually buying?
Great question. So at the high level, it's like our goal is to help developer and organization to build better AI, right? Which serves humans better. And by better, like I mentioned, is like one is reliability. Reliability means that the AI provides answers which are in line with the user's intent and expectations. And the other things is like, give you the results in the most cost-efficient way. Okay? Or maybe someone gives you faster, right? It's like, so this is kind of what we are about. And of course, in order to do that, you need trustful, high quality evaluations, right? Because you have many choices, which choice you are going to choose to select for your application. Now, the first step in this journey, it's about helping model providers to evaluate their models and to help them improve, right? So what we sell to our customers, in this case, model providers, it's evaluations, right? The basic evaluations means that, they can provide, so how this happens. They can provide a checkpoint, a model they want to evaluate. And then we put it on Arena under an anonymized, right? It's anonymized. And the users will vote in some of these tasks. We are going to select that model we want to evaluate. And after a certain number of votes, you can provide to the model providers, hey, this model here is how is ranking at this, on these categories and so forth, and overall rating and so forth. And then we also provide, some data to help them understand why it's performing the way it's performing. Okay, so that's kind of we provide. That's kind of our basic product, and obviously now we are going to sell evaluation for agents, and then we have also ability to use our data to route to the best model for your prompt and for your tasks. It's actually already available, and this actually it's a product we just provide for free to our users.
Something I keep going back to is, when I had that conversation about Anyscale, he mentioned this idea that if you're going to climb a hill, you better be climbing the right one, and you all are determining what that hill is. And what's so great about this conversation is it keeps reminding me that you all are putting humans at the center. We're creating these hills that are human-centric.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that a company like that exists in the ecosystem in a world where we constantly talk so much about automation, AGI, however you define it. You are interfacing with a lot of young, bright humans in the classroom. It seems like you have a constant desire to return there. I'm curious with your time in these classrooms with these bright people shaping the future, what are they spending time on? What do you hope some of them build in the next couple decades?
It's, great question. So there are a few things. So one thing that's excited for me is this kind of concept of reliability. Is that about, is the agent doing whatever is doing is aligned with the user intent? And this is very hard because many times, you specify something, you say, I want X, but you have so much context, you don't rely to the model, right? So it's again, I want to help me to buy a blue sweater or sweater. but maybe there are so many things you haven't said. We just didn't realize that the agent misses a context. Maybe you know what it's made of. Of course, you need to specify the size. Maybe you have a particular type pattern, like micro pattern you like, and so forth. So I think that's kind of things about how you have the agent and AI satisfy and being aligned with the user intent. I think it's very important, and it's going to be more and more and more important. Related with this is about, we need to understand how the agent fails when it doesn't do it. When it doesn't, we call it this kind of terms, hallucination and so forth, but it's much more subtle than that, right? So I see, because at the end of the day, it's like all this AI will be successful if it's serves the human in a better way, right? It's like makes people more productive, makes people happier, right? So I think, giving them more time to do things what they like, for instance, right? So I think that's why this reliability and kind of the trust that the agent is going to do what I want to do, I think it's very important, it's very exciting. On a shorter term, obviously, there is this kind of concept, it's very expensive, right? So how can you get that value in the most effective way? And this is true for anything we need, right? It's like, how do you do, you buy a TV, a car, right? You always look at these trade-offs. And I think that, you don't need to always use the most powerful model, right? If I want to do a simple addition or some kind of simple math, almost all the models are doing that now correctly, right? So you can use the cheapest. That's why, for instance, what I mentioned to you, this kind of intelligent router we call Max is trying to figure out, based on your task, which model is going to be good enough to correctly and solve that task. But yeah, these are the few things which I am very excited about.
Yeah, what I keep coming back to is whether it's reliability or this trade-off between performance versus cost versus latency. These are all things you can't solve unless you get measurement right. And we're just really excited that you, Anastasio, Swalen are working on this problem for the industry.
Happy we can contribute.
Thank you for joining us on Lightwork.
Thank you so much.